This conference will now be recorded.
How are we doing with attendance?
Chet, I believe we have a quorum, yes.
Okay. Well, I guess we can get started. Let me get my agenda up. Okay, welcome everybody. I appreciate everyone participating in this special technical advisory committee meeting. We'll get started with roll call certification and certification of a quorum. Nicole?
Yes, ma'am. I'll go ahead and take attendance. If you guys would go ahead and find your mic so you can hit your unmute button. I'm going to go ahead and start with Chesterfield County, Ms. Smith.
Actually, Barb, can we go ahead? Do you mind reading the first item there? I think we need to read that still.
Let
Okay.
me get here. Dismiss this. We ask that everyone identify themselves first when speaking so we can more accurately record the activities of the meeting. All lines have been muted by the administrator to minimize additional noise and feedback. You may unmute your line at any time to request acknowledgement from the chair. Staff will be monitoring the chat throughout the meeting to assure we do not overlook anyone wishing to participate in the discussion. Please indicate your presence by saying aye when your name is called during roll call. Anyone who wishes to identify themselves following the roll call of members will be invited to do so. All right, so Nicole.
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you. I can certify that we have followed the approved procedures, and I will now be taking roll call for this meeting. Chesterfield County, Ms. Smith.
Aye.
Ms. Faulkner. City of Richmond, Ms. Clark. Mr. Bridewell.
Aye.
Goochland County, Mr. Coleman. I think I saw him in attendance. Maybe he doesn't have audio. Goochland County, Mr. Kilduff. Hanover County, Mr. Vidunas.
Here.
Mr. Flagg. Henrico County, Ms. Smidler.
Aye.
Mr. Yor. New Kent County, Ms. Leduc. Powhatan County, Mr. Pompey.
Here.
Mr. Howland. Town of Ashland, Miss Amos.
Here.
Mr. Tucker. CRAC, Mr. Rutledge. GRTC, Ms. Torres.
Here.
Ms. Del Ross.
Here.
RMTA, Ms. Simmons. Plan RVA, Mr. Parsons.
Here.
Mr. Ariel.
I'm here.
Right Finders, Ms. Tisdale. Mr. O'Keefe.
Aye.
DRPT, Ms. Dubinsky.
Aye.
Mr. Sparks. VDOT, Ms. McAdory. And Mr. Herman. Madam Chair, that concludes the roll call for attendance.
Okay, we'll move on to the next item, which is the statement regarding virtual meetings. Bear with me while I read through this. Since the governor declared the state of emergency on March 12, 2020, in response to the COVID pandemic, state and local government bodies have been providing for the continuity of government by meeting remotely by telephonic or electronic means in compliance with the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, the Commonwealth's emergency, and other applicable laws, guidance provided by the Attorney General and their respective legal counsel. On April 22nd, the General Assembly approved a budget amendment to authorize all public bodies, including regional bodies such as Plan RVA and the Richmond Regional TPO, likewise to meet by electronic means without a physical quorum assembled together during the governor declared state of emergency, as long as certain conditions are met, so as to provide for the continuity of government operations. This new authority is effective immediately. The bylaws of the RRTPO define a quorum of the body to be a majority of the TAC membership, which shall include at a minimum 4 of the local government representatives. The 2020 COVID-19 virus makes it impractical and unsafe and even potentially life-threatening for a quorum of the size to physically assemble in one location pursuant to Code Section 2.2-3708.2 A3. Further, the virus makes it impractical and unsafe for the public and the agency's staff to gather in the same location to participate in this meeting. The health, safety, and welfare of our community is of paramount importance. Therefore, we have determined the appropriateness and eligibility to conduct today's meeting of the TAC electronically pursuant to the provisions of Virginia Code Section 2.2-3708.2 and related legislation approved by the General Assembly of Virginia and in light of the Governor's State of Emergency Declaration for COVID-19. The convening of the Richmond TPO TAC has been determined necessary in order to continue the necessary business of the organization. The matters included on the agenda address important and essential matters of continuing the work of government, and therefore it is appropriate to convene during this time. While we do not know the exact duration of the current practice of electronic meetings, we will continue to function in this manner until such time as it's deemed advisable to return to in-person meetings. TPO staff have provided notice of this meeting and the means by which we are virtually gathered to members of the public. Notice was provided on June 22nd, 2020 through posting on the Plan RVA website and distribution of email notification to members, alternates, and known interested parties, including the media. In order to comply with the provisions of Virginia law and to improve accessibility to the discussions intended for today, this meeting will be recorded. Audio, visual recordings of the meeting will be posted on the Plan RVA website within 48 hours of this meeting. Any members of the public wishing to address the RRTPO TAC were invited to submit comments via email until the close of business one day prior to the meeting in order to be reviewed and addressed during the meeting if necessary. Anyone participating as an observer during the meeting today may submit comments or questions at any time during the meeting via email at rrtpoinput@planrva.org or by using the online chat functions of the meeting platform. Those individuals who are observing by phone may be called upon to address the RRTPO TAC with their questions or comments. All questions and comments submitted during the meeting will be reviewed following the meeting, and to the extent practical, responses may be provided or posted on the Plan RVA website. Does anyone have any questions regarding the process for effective facilitation of this meeting or how members of the public may participate? Okay, that's good. I think the next one is Chet's.
Yes, and thank you. The procedures for electronic meetings have not changed since the TPO first established those, I believe, in April. Those have been posted and accompany the agenda. For that reason, we don't need to read through those in particular. So if anyone has any questions, there are 2 opportunities for public engagement in the agenda, and we can certainly address those questions at that point.
Okay, thanks, Chet. So next on the agenda, item number 1 is approval of today's meeting agenda. Is there a motion for approval?
This is Tiffany Dubinsky. So moved.
Sharon Smidler, second.
Okay, thank you very much. Nicole, will you?
Yes, Madam Chairman. The committee will now be voting on item number 1, approval of today's meeting agenda. There are a few people that I couldn't hear for the roll call for attendance, but I think I'll call them out for the vote because I think they're here. Chesterfield County, Ms. Smith.
Aye.
City of Richmond, Mr. Bridewell.
Aye.
Goochland County, Mr. Coleman.
Aye.
Hanover County, Mr. Vidunas.
Aye.
Henrico County, Ms. Smidler. Ms. Smidler, can you hear me?
Aye.
Thank you. New Kent County, Ms. Leduc. Powhatan County, Mr. Pompey.
Aye.
Town of Ashland, Ms. Amos.
Aye.
GRTC, Ms. Torres.
Aye.
Plan RVA, Mr. Parsons.
Aye.
Ride Finders, Mr. O'Keefe.
Aye.
DRPT, Ms. Dubinsky.
Aye.
VDOT, Ms. McAdory.
Aye.
Thank you. That concludes the roll call for item number 1.
Thank you very much. So next on our agenda is the public comment period. Did we receive any written comments?
We did not.
And I didn't see anyone in the chat when I checked just a moment ago. So seeing none, we'll move on to item number 3, which is the main purpose of our meeting today, the Smart Scale Round 4 Regional Project Selection. Chet?
Thank you. Before we get started, I wanted to make sure that we did have audio with Liz and Jake from VDOT. If you're there, can you respond?
Liz is here.
Jake's here too.
Great. Thank you. So as we look at the agenda item, I have that on the screen. The requested action, as you all know, is to review and recommendation of the final regional project candidate pool to develop the regional scale, smart scale applications for the TPO. We were able to submit as pre-applications 12 projects this time around in round 4. We received comments back from those pre-applications, and at this point, tax duty is to narrow those 12 projects down to 10 for final application, with the goal, the reason why we're calling this meeting today is to have a recommendation for the policy board to consider on July 2nd, which is the next time they meet. We do know that the timeline, I believe, is August 3rd for the applications to be completed. So we are on a tight schedule for the most part. We do not. I was able to distribute with the help of Mr. Bushing a summary of the screening results. I do have that on the screen here as well. Let me zoom out a little bit. Anybody's looking for each of the 12 projects. 2 of our projects screened all the way through, which is the Ashland to Petersburg Trail Chickahominy River Crossing, project number 6768, and project number 6914, Broad Street Streetscape with the Pulse BRT Expansion Phase 1. The rest of the projects conditionally screened in. There were different reasons and explanations given for each. We did include in the summary in the agenda packet the communication that we got through the portal that detailed what those conditional screening conditions were. And at this point, that's what we have as part of our I guess, our resources to make a determination on what to move forward. At this point, with the information given, staff is not readily able to provide a recommendation to the. I would happily entertain a conversation about if anyone has advice, direction, anything that we could consider as a way to start this calling out process. And I was asking if VDOT was available so they could possibly maybe provide us some other background in terms of what they're looking for and what I believe some additional information came out either this morning or yesterday about what it needs to be conditionally screened in. So maybe Jake or Liz could talk about that for a second.
This is Liz. Do you have the graphic that Jake provided? It might be, you're able to put that on the screen, or if not, that's okay.
You mean with the conditions? Yes, I can find that.
Now, and while you're looking for that, basically, we have some additional information. We don't have specific project specific information. Yeah, that right there. And Jake, I'll let you go ahead and kind of explain what this means.
Yeah, so this year they decided to introduce conditionally screened in. I think it's having a way bigger impact than what it actually is, because this time last year all of these projects would be conditionally screened in as well. Because so early on all we're asking for is description, sketch, and estimate, and a lot of those aren't refined. Pretty much all of these comments are just asking, put more description in the estimate, the sketch, and the description, and it'll likely screen in. The issue that we're having this year with the newer requirements for assessments required, like a major planning study, a detailed operational safety assessment, those are the ones that we're probably gonna have to talk through, but that's just kind of the lowdown on what conditionally screened in is. It's not really condemning the project at all. It's just saying it needs a little bit of work. And I went through and looked at most of these, and most of them, it's going to be something as simple as putting right-of-way lines on a sketch, and actually including some of the features that are in the sketch in the description. And it's more of a complete project, and it can be scored. There's a few that have been identified that are going to need deeper analysis, and it might be that there has been something done, it just wasn't uploaded because we didn't require it in pre-screening. So like I-95 at Route 10 interchange phase 2, pretty much they're asking for an approved SJR, things like that. It's going to be in, it looks like 3 or 4 need better study recommendations. The rest of them are just description, sketch, and estimate issues.
And if I could just chime in real quick with a little bit of, for a point of reference. So statewide, there were 484 pre-applications. 394 of them were the conditional screen in. So we're right on par. The TPO is on par with the district, and district's on par with the state. So I just kind of wanted to mention that to reiterate Jake's point that being screened in conditionally isn't necessarily a bad thing, particularly at this stage.
Thanks for clarifying that. I know that there was a lot of confusion at the beginning, especially, people were in a panic that, I thought we were doing all right. So that's really helpful. I was wondering if we could talk about the projects that have comments relating to studies. The projects that are in Chesterfield where there are comments related to studies, we have those studies, or those studies are being finalized and will be ready for the final applications. But I thought we could go through the list and make sure that's the case for all of the candidate projects.
Okay, from 6685, That's the southbound 288 hard shoulder running.
We know there's a study for that because that was submitted last time. So I think
Yeah.
that one's okay.
But I think the update on this one is if you're including a signal at the end of the ramp or the ramp terminal, if that is chosen in the scope, we're going to need to get us an SJR done. I don't think that was on the last application. I think that's the caveat on this one.
And Jake, I think we have time still to do an SJR, correct?
Oh yeah, we can do an SJR. We have the consultant resources. TMPD is offering help as well. So.
Right.
Hey, Jacob and Liz, I recall that Kinley Horn did some of that analysis for VDOT at that intersection last time. I don't know what the results are, but that certainly can get it jump started.
Sounds good.
9510 is similar with that comment. And with last round, the IMR was submitted along with signal justification memo, I think it was, but I think we've got what we need for that one and can refine it if there's any revisions needed.
I need to correct myself. I was talking about I-95 at Route 10 Phase 2.
Okay. 360 Courthouse, we've got that study available. I don't think Chester Linear Park Extension needed a study.
No.
Powhite northbound, we've got that study being finalized. Same with southbound. I don't think this A to P on Route 1 had a study requirement.
It does not, no.
95 southbound Ox Lane. I know there's been a study underway. Is that one ready, or do we have enough for that one?
This is Travis. I believe it's related to the port study, but I'm not a part of that. Chet, you might want to expand.
Sure. We're doing a planning study right now, but it's not going to be, it's not an IMR or an SJR. It's higher level than that. But that's Baker's doing that. So they provided a lot of the materials for the pre-app.
So that one's maybe a question mark, whether it's going to have a study, acceptable study ready.
Sounds like it.
All right. What's after that? 64 eastbound needed an alternatives analysis.
Correct. I don't know what we have on that.
Miles, if you're on the call, do you know of anything
Sure,
that we might not?
I can jump in. We have the EIS from that. So last time we just submitted the executive summary to go with it, but we could submit the whole report if needed.
Does the EIS meet the study requirement for those two projects?
It does go through the alternatives that were explored. I don't know if that's going to meet the VDOT standard of what they're looking for this particular.
That's something that we're still trying to figure out, and we're going to have to run past OIP and TMPD within the next week.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of need to know that to decide about our projects. All right, what's next?
So that was eastbound and then westbound, and that's the last of them.
Okay, did we talk about 288?
Wasn't that at the top? We'll get back
Oh,
to it.
right.
Yeah.
It had that signal justification thing too.
Right.
And that was not an issue. Okay, so the 3 projects which we're not certain about will have the required study are the 95 aux lane, 64 eastbound, and 64 westbound. I'd hate to move forward with one of those and not be able to pull the study together.
Jake, how long do you think it would take to get confirmation for 64?
If we, Liz, correct me if I'm wrong, we should probably have that EIS somewhere in the district and we can get that verified. I mean, we can send it right now and hopefully within a day or
Yeah.
two.
Right. Correct.
Yeah.
Are we certain that the 95 aux lane doesn't have what it needs to proceed?
This is Liz, and I can't remember if this recommendation is coming straight from the Commerce Corridor study. I think the answer to that question is no. The study that we're doing right now.
Correct. I think that's the case.
Then my answer would be no, because we're just now entering public involvement.
So that
Well,
could potentially be one project. That still leaves us with 11.
I hate to cut that one.
Forgive me, this is Liz. And this is the I-95 southbound auxiliary lanes a reapply, or is this the first time?
I think it's the first time
I thought too.
because we were doing the commerce study during round 3,
Right.
and this is a spinoff of that.
That was the first time too.
This is Joe Vaudunas. Would there be any value taking a straw poll, these issues notwithstanding, to see just kind of where our minds are? If there's any consensus around, because I assume, well, maybe not, but I assume that everybody had gone through and kind of came up with their 10. I did.
I was kind of hoping to hear people's discussion. You know, I've done the same thing, but there was the study issue and the cost issue. Higher cost projects usually don't score well. So that was another consideration on my part. And looking at the previous benefit scores for projects that were already submitted. And I only did that for the big, expensive guys, the 4 at the bottom.
This is a virtual call, but I mean, please, if anyone wants to be part of this conversation, unmute yourself and chime in.
Is VDOT not conducting I-64 study as they did for I-95? Are the results for that study out?
This is Liz with VDOT. The data collection and existing conditions reports are done. We just now are developing draft recommendations, so I don't know. I can't give you any indication of whether or not these projects would be included or not.
And this is Chesterfield County. Aren't they on the 64 Accord, that study is focusing on lower cost solutions, right?
If
I
you're
don't
going to
think-
follow the model with the 95 and do, operational, they're going to break out the operational versus the capital improvements as they can be more easily funded. So yes, they're going to have a list of both recommendations by the fall for capital and operational, but you're correct
Okay.
in that they would probably go after the low hanging fruit.
I see. Okay. Thank you.
This is Travis. It's a big chunk of change with New Kent. I would focus on the westbound improvement rather than the eastbound. Eastbound, you had your lanes and lanes coming from the 295 down to Bottoms Bridge. I think that works well, and it's going to work well for a while, but I would focus on westbound, put that as a priority.
That's good to hear. I was kind of curious whether one was a little bit worse than the other. Well, I'll put it out to the group to see if there's consensus in dropping the 95 aux lane project because we don't think the study will be ready.
I mean, I agree. If that's the case and the study is a requirement, then yeah, then that's easy. That wasn't one that I had picked, but it's got to meet the requirements.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
This is Travis. I would hate to drop the 95 auxiliary lane as well. I think you're on the same page, Barb.
Oh yeah, I hate dropping it, but if it doesn't have the study that's required and it will not make it through validation, then it doesn't make sense to submit it.
Well, I believe this is the first time we can go again. It's a real need.
Right. Okay. So do we need to take a vote on that, or we want to put that aside and figure out the next one to get rid of? Let's do that. Put that one aside, figure out the next one. Does anyone want to get us started?
This is Liz. Can I mention one more thing that I'm not sure that the whole group is aware of? Is that
Sure.
New Kent County has submitted both of those pre-applications, and they are both also conditionally screened in.
Ooh, that's good to know. Okay, so when we think about that, we know that the TPO is only eligible for high priority money, right? And the locality is eligible for both district grant and high priority.
Correct. Now, I don't know, I haven't spoken to New Kent since. I don't know if they're planning to go ahead and finalize those applications or not. That I don't know.
And this is Sharon Smidler. How many applications did New Kent submit? Are they trying to narrow it down from 12 to 10, or were they already at 10?
They had
Sure.
3.
Let me see. I have a list. They get 4. They submitted 3, and those are the only 2 that conditionally screened in. Their other one did not.
Okay, so yeah, so if they're going to move forward, those are what they're going to move forward with. Well, Travis suggested that 64 eastbound might be able to hang in there.
I would focus on the westbound as a real need coming through the interchange. Again, you have the good lane drop at Bottoms Bridge going east. I'd focus as a priority as a westbound myself. I drive it every day to Richmond.
The only risk is by letting the eastbound be submitted by, well, let's think about that. Maybe Chesa can help me. If these two projects get submitted by both the locality and the TPO, the way that they do the funding scenario, they do district grant first, right?
Right.
So, oh, it's kind of good to get it out of it. It would be good to get it out of district grant.
It would suck up the whole thing.
It would use up all the money.
It probably wouldn't even be enough in district grants to do both of them,
Right.
let alone one, or one of them, let alone two of them. But yeah. So I definitely think that's a plus of pulling it out. District grant pot.
Mhm.
Barb, this is Chet. I guess it's probably premature, but is there any is there any gamesmanship in thinking about CBTA funds?
There
I mean,
is.
probably not till next cycle, right?
Well, yeah, we talked about that some too. You know, some of these projects had really low benefit scores, and they're probably not going to improve greatly this round. And those projects are good candidates to think about CVTA funding, because I would hope that the prioritization process that we develop for the region won't be as stringent necessarily as smart scale, or at least you're taking away the statewide competition. So it'll be easier to get some of the low scoring projects funded with CVTA money than through smart scale. And, you know, I'd rather get the 64 stuff funded with smart scale, because I'm kind of old school and feel like interstates at least ought to be a state responsibility, you know?
This is Andrew. Of those top 4 or most expensive projects, what were the highest benefits? Which ones had the highest benefit score?
Let's see, the 64 widening, that was one project lumped up all together last round, and it had a benefit score of 8.9. Let's see, the next one was 9510. It had a benefit score of 3.7. And then 288 Southbound had a benefit score of 0.47. So it was the lowest, 288, and then 64, when it was lumped up all together, had the highest and significantly higher. I was trying to figure out if splitting 64 would mean a substantial change to their smart scale score. And I think it's a wash. And I don't know if this logic is sound, but you're reducing the benefit because you're only looking at one direction at a time. But at the same time, you're reducing the cost. So you've got a negative reduction in benefit and a positive reduction in cost. So I'm thinking the smart scale score is kind of going to be the same. I don't know if that makes sense. I did notice 288 hard shoulder running, the estimate's gone down. Chessa told me that last time it was 35 million in round 3, and now it's 24. So that'll have a positive impact on the score, but that benefit score was so low.
This is Liz. I just want to chime in one thing about the estimates that this year they are in 2020 dollars, whereas they were in a future year last round.
Oh, so that might be why it is what it is. Yeah. Okay. All right. Forget that.
Barb, this is Nora. I'm sorry I don't know much about your projects, and I appreciate you providing the score information. Your small projects, 6708, the 360 Courthouse Road intersection improvement, did you submit that last time?
Yep.
And how did it score?
I think it scored pretty well. I didn't get the data on that, but we could look it up. Because it's low cost, from what I'm remembering, it scored pretty well.
Okay.
I'll see if I've got that pulled up.
I'll pull it up.
Chessa to the rescue. That's great. Thanks, Chessa.
You're welcome. Its raw benefit score was just off benefits was 1.889. Once you factored in the estimate, the smart scale score was 4.172. It was ranked 24th in the district. So
Mm-hmm.
And for further reference, let's see, I was going to see what the rankings were for the other three we were talking about. Oh, shoot. Let's see. Sorry. Technical difficulties. Oh, there we go. Okay, so the I-64 widening project was the 58th ranked project in the district. Let's see, which direction? 288 southbound, hard shoulder running?
Yep, southbound.
That one was 68th in the district ranking. And 9510 phase 2 ranked 53rd. So courthouse 360, I think, was, what did we say,
24.
Yeah.
It's important to remember, though, that each round, it's a whole another set of projects that you're competing against.
Right, yeah, it's hard
but it does, at least it gives us something to consider, you know. If anyone's having trouble talking to us with audio, be sure to use the chat box.
I wish Kelly was able to join us. I mean, does it make sense to talk to New Kent and see what their intentions are?
Well, I mean, we know that 64 is really important to them. In RRTPO definitely has agreed that 64 is priority, you know, maybe in a less formal way.
Right.
I sort of feel like it would look bad to drop those projects.
This is Nora. I agree.
And I want to make sure Tom can talk to us, because I think that 288's benefit score last time was pretty bad. And that, I was going to suggest that we think about dropping that one.
Barb, thanks. I'm following the conversation, obviously. The only thing I can add is I do recall that a lot of these projects didn't score well because they were competing against the Hampton Roads. And as I understand it, those projects, it was a one-time project, so-called, and that wouldn't happen the next time these projects are scored.
Yeah, so that Hampton Roads project skewed the congestion measure, and what other, there were two measures that it really messed up. Was it safety and congestion?
I'm not sure, Barb, what the other one was.
But definitely congestion. So any project that was counting on doing well in that regard, just got minimal points.
This is Joe again.
This is Andrew. On the 288 one, if that was not funded through Smart Scale, what would be a good funding source for that? Because that is a regional project that several jurisdictions are interested in.
I'm hoping that the CVTA will be a good source for that. The regional funding through the CVTA, not the local.
Okay, because I think that is an important, project to fund, and as long as there's a strategy for it, maybe Smart Scale is not the best option. I'm open to that one.
Yeah, I mean, this is like 95 for us. We've got a lot of people that commute on 288, and we want to see that project along with the 95 aux lane. They're both beneficial to the region. The CVTA money will show up faster than the Smart Scale money.
And for Gibson County, just the issues with 288 are a county. Locally, they are a priority.
Mm-hmm.
This is Joe again. So back to this 264 projects. I think if New Kent is going to submit, and I think that's the safe assumption that they will, I don't see how it does make sense to have two entities submit applications for the same project. I had those two projects very high on my list. They were the next to ours. They were the ones that I thought were the most worthy, at least from a benefit standpoint. So it's not that I don't think the projects are good projects, important projects. I just think that I think we're wasting two opportunities. And I'd rather take a flyer on something that might be a long shot rather than submit the same project twice.
So who should submit 64? Should it be New Kent or should it be the TPO?
It should be New Kent. And I think they've already indicated that with their pre-app, haven't they? Or did I misunderstand?
They did. They submitted pre-apps for it. So they're eligible when New Kent submits it, they're eligible to compete for both district grant and high priority.
So another reason that makes sense for them to submit as well, because they could potentially tap into one of two funding sources.
This is Nora. I thought Barb said the reason why that might not be the best route to go is because they would be required to take district money first, which would then pull away from funds that we would have for our projects, our district projects.
That is true. The way that they go about funding the projects once they get the scores is they use up the district grant first. So if 64, if one or both of these projects is a high scoring project, it would get funded using district grant. Well, if there's not enough district grant to fund it, they'd skip it and then they'd fund it with high priority. How much district grant are we going to get in round 4? Do we have a projection?
Well, we get 67 last time, so I mean,
Okay, so they could fund one of them, but then the other one would be partially, so they would skip it, and then they would backfill it with high priority.
Yeah, I got you. Thanks for clarifying that, Nora. I had misunderstood. I heard it just the opposite. So, yeah, I don't think we want to suck down the district grant funds. Why don't we get New Kent to submit a couple of these Chesterfield projects? Can we do that?
Yeah.
This is Liz. One other thing I wanted to mention about the new Kent I-64 applications is there was a lot of back and forth between New Kent, and they really didn't decide to put it. They had planned on not putting in applications, and kind of at the last minute they decided. So I don't know. I'm not 100% sure they will put them in, but I can't say they won't either. I just wanted to give you guys that piece of information.
Yeah.
So this is Nora again, and as the person who doesn't really have a dog in this hunt, it seems that perhaps, and it also, because we don't have, sorry, are y'all getting that feedback?
Yeah, I'll mute mine. Maybe that.
Sorry. And since it doesn't seem that we have really a ranking system in place yet, perhaps we should look at an equity view of the number of applications per locality. Again, I don't have anything in here, so.
I like that approach. This is Tom from Goochland.
Oh, this is Liz again. One other thing about the 264 that Jake just reminded me of is we are pretty sure, we're not 100% sure, but we're pretty sure sound walls are going to be required on both sides, regardless if both, like if only eastbound gets funded, they're still going to have to build sound walls on westbound and vice versa. And that is not reflected in the current estimate. So meaning that those estimates are going to very likely go up.
Okay, well, that's good to know.
Mr. Chairman, how are we planning to handle this? A vote? Are we ready for a motion?
Yep, we'll need a motion in a second.
Well, I'm not going to make a motion, but I was going to suggest now that we do drop the 264 projects. Before I make that as a motion, is there, what do you guys think?
Is that gonna
upset
I think we need a second. Oh, you're not making a motion. You're just bringing it.
We're still talking. I mean, I'll go ahead and make it formal, but I don't want to do it if everybody's going to get mad at me. Is anybody going to get mad?
I won't get mad at you, but I don't know that I would support it.
Okay, well, what would your proposal be?
Well, let me tell you why I wouldn't support it. I sort of feel like our TPO has made it clear their support to 64. And as the TAC, it would look really bad for us to drop those projects. I would rather have a conversation with New Kent and say, we're going to submit them, you don't submit them. But if I were New Kent, I would say, well, I'm going to submit them anyway because I want to go after both fund sources.
I think it's important to consider what Liz shared about that New Kent almost didn't submit the pre-apps. I think they're they weren't all in, and I heard that as well. So I don't know if that matters, but I think that's something to consider.
What do you think that means, Chet? I mean, they don't really have the necessary, what am I trying to say? They don't believe strongly in the projects, or they don't have the capabilities really to submit a strong application?
It's related to your second point.
Okay. They need help. They want help.
Yeah, they certainly won the project.
Okay, yeah, that's what
I mean, VDOT's offered to help locality, so I'm sure if New Kent wanted to continue with that application, they could get VDOT support to make it happen. But maybe the compromise to do what Travis suggested before, and we submit westbound and let New Kent do eastbound, or, well, New Kent can do whatever they want.
This is Liz. I want to make 2 points. When I talked to Ms. Leduc before the applications were going in, part of the reason they hadn't done it yet was there was I don't know if it was a miscommunication or no communication, but communication from their board members had not gotten down to staff level that they wanted to apply for it. And the second thing I was going to say is, and this is just a suggestion, if this is possible, could you guys come up with a plan that if you support one or both of them, could you come up with a plan to take action to include it, or excuse me, to eliminate them if New Kent puts them in, but if not, have a backup plan? I don't know how we would actually work that with a motion, but just a suggestion.
Yeah. We did something sort of similar over in Chesterfield, where we needed our board to take some action before we knew the pre-screening results. So we got them to put the projects in priority order and said, we'll do the top 10, depending on how it pre-screens. We could kind of do the same thing here. Give the TPO a priority list, and then say if New Kent's going to submit one or both of these, we'll drop them and we will use whatever's next on the list to make our 10. You see what I'm saying?
Right, that's kind of what I was trying to say. You said it much more eloquently, Barb.
I don't know. No one said they agree. They understood it. Okay, so if we're going to do something like that, I would say number 12 is the 95 aux lane. Now we just need to figure out what 11 is. I think it should be a big and expensive project. I don't think I haven't seen it yet, that expensive projects compete well on smart scale. At least expensive projects in our region. You have to be in Hampton Roads or where you're leveraging a bajillion trillion dollars and asking for 1% from smart scale.
Well, does that mean it's the 9510 project?
It certainly could be, or it could be 288.
Oh, I'm sorry. What was the first one you mentioned?
I was saying 95 aux lane would be the 12th, the project at the very bottom of the list.
And that's because it's not ready yet
Right.
in terms of the study. Okay.
So now we're trying to figure out kind of the project that we think is going to do the worst, or if you want to think about what Nora said with equitability, a project for a locality, you know, if we want to spread it around the region more, put a project from a locality that's got a lot on the list already. I'm not naming who those might be.
No, I mean, I think there is some logic in trying to represent everyone that is trying to, and these are all regional priorities. I mean, under the logic of big expensive projects, the most expensive project on the list, New Kent, is the most expensive project on the list by a significant amount.
Yeah, and that corresponds to Travis's comment before. Okay, so let's, I better keep notes. 1295 Ox Lane,
I'm taking notes too.
1164 eastbound. All right. How about 10?
I didn't think we were going that route. I thought we were going to make the 264 projects number 9 and 10, and we were looking for 11. Because I thought we just went back to the idea that it looked bad to leave the 264 projects out. So we're going to put them in, even though New Kent is potentially going to be submitting.
Okay.
And now it seems like we're going kind of halfway.
Okay. Well, let's do that.
Yeah.
So we still need an 11. We've got 9 is 64 westbound, 10 is 64 eastbound. We need 11, and 12 is 95 Ox Lane.
Barb, this is Nora. If Chesterfield had to pick a project that didn't get selected, what would Chesterfield pick?
The 9510.
Then this is Nora again. I suggest 9510.
Okay, so 9510 would be 11. Would we keep the rest of the list as it's shown here? Which is in a cost, it's sorted by cost.
This is Nora. I feel like we would be here another 2 hours if we were to prioritize this list.
And not even be able to explain how we came up with the list.
Okay, so I think we need to, we can't really say that we've prioritized the list. We need to explain that our recommendation for the top 10, we just need to recommend the top 10 and then say whether, if New Kent's going to submit 64, one or both of them, then we will default to 9510 phase 2 as the first fill-in, and then 95 Ox Lane as the second, if for some reason New Kent's going to submit both. That makes sense?
Does to me.
Sounds like a plan.
Sounds good.
Sounds good.
Someone want to make a motion?
This is Tom from Gooch, and I'll make that motion. So moved.
Is there a second?
This is Andrew. I'll second.
Okay. Any more discussion?
Madam Chair, can we get Nicole to read back the motion?
Okay, well, I didn't write out the motion, but here's what I have. Project 9 and 10 are going to be I-64 westbound and eastbound. if New Kent County does not submit these two projects, they will be in the top 10 for the TPO. If New Kent does submit these two projects, then we will add I-95 Route 10 and I-95 Ox Lane to the top 10 list. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think we need to not use top 10 list,
Okay.
but yeah,
The 10 projects.
right. And just say that the alternate projects are in the order of 9510 Phase 2 and then 95 Ox Lane.
Yes, ma'am. That sounds good. Should
You
I go
good,
ahead and take a roll call?
Are you good, Chet? You look confused.
I'm good. We also will have the transcription, so we can sort it out.
Okay. All right. Yeah. If you'll take the vote, Nicole.
I sure will. All right. The committee will now be voting on item number 3, Smart Scale Round 4 Regional Project Selections. Chesterfield County, Ms. Smith.
Aye.
City of Richmond, Mr. Bridewell.
Aye.
Goochland County, Mr. Coleman.
Aye.
Hanover County, Mr. Vidunas.
Aye.
Henrico County, Ms. Smidler.
Aye.
Powhatan County, Mr. Pompey.
Aye.
Town of Ashland, Ms. Amos.
Aye.
GRTC, Ms. Torres.
Aye.
Plan RVA, Mr. Parsons.
Aye.
Right Finders, Mr. O'Keefe.
Aye.
DRPT, Ms. Dubinsky.
Aye.
And VDOT, Ms. McAdory.
Aye.
And that concludes the roll call for item number 3.
Thank you. All right. Item number 4 is public comment period. Have we received any public comments? Or is there anyone participating that would like to make a comment? All right. Seeing none, we'll move on to number 5, TAC member comments. Anybody have any comments? All right. Number 6, our next meeting is July 14th. We do have the TPO meeting on July 2nd. And I wanted to thank everyone again for participating in this meeting and making your calendar available and participating in the call. And those are hard decisions. So I appreciate all the input. So with that, we'll be adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Everybody.
Thank you, Barb.
Thanks.
Aye.